hope I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny
I'm sorry, everyone. I lost my OBS window. It just disappeared on me. I think oh, I know what I did wrong. Give me just a second to fix this. I was rearranging things and I did the absolute wrong thing. There we go. That's where we need to be. All right. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. It is Friday, so we will end the show on an up note. I have found what will probably be a regular weekly feature, and that is a Babylon Bee video. This particular one is from their podcast, and it is 7 ways to gain points after a national tragedy on social media. I think it's perfectly timed. But before we get into the funny part, I have some very, very disturbing news to report to you. This just happened a little bit ago. There was I don't even know how to call it. There was an attack on a Capitol Police checkpoint just outside of the U.S. Capitol just a few hours ago. You can't quite see in the picture here. I'll blow it up for you. Let me get to the right window. You can see here there's a there's a sedan that crashed into a checkpoint stop area. According to reports, the suspect then got out of the car with a knife, and shots were fired. I do know that the attacker has been pronounced dead, and this just came in from the Post-Millennial. According to Fox News' Jackie Heinrich, one of the officers has been declared dead as well. There were a total of 3 people involved in this, 2 Capitol Hill officers and the attacker. And now, as we hear, 2 of them are dead. They were all taken to hospital. There was an airlift that actually landed on the east front of the Capitol building, believe it or not, the Politico there. So a very tragic situation, and we'll learn more about it as it goes along. Of course, all of our prayers, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone, all of our prayers to the families of everyone involved, even whoever this attacker was. I'm not going to guess on motive, but obviously his loss is a tragedy to that family as well. So we should keep everyone in our thoughts and prayers. It's a horrible thing, very upsetting. All right, let's move along then. Let's not dwell on that. Our first Babylon Bee bookend, the one on the left for a Friday. This is from their entertainment section. Warner Brothers cast Kamala Harris as the Joker. Folks, that is probably the most disturbing photo from a Babylon Bee article I have ever and will ever see. As we can see here, we have Kamala Harris in perfect mufti as the Heath Ledger Joker. Dateline Burbank, California. Ever since the great Heath Ledger played the Joker back in 2008, has it been that long? Warner Brothers has been looking for someone who could live up to his amazing performance. Joaquin Phoenix came close, while Jared Leto, well, didn't. But the studio believes it now has found the next Joker, Kamala Harris, who has been hired to play the role in the upcoming film, The Batman. Producers for the film got the idea while watching a press conference in which Harris was asked about the crisis at the border and responded with a creepy, bone-chilling laugh. Said casting director Harry Flugelman, her cackle, that dead look in her eye. She's perfect. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard her laugh. That's the Joker we've been looking for all these years. Even better than Mark Hamill's voice work in the show and video games. Fantastic stuff, really. This movie is going to make us so much money. Close quote. The move wasn't without resistance, however. Many people involved in the film believe that Kamala Harris's take on the character is far too dark, even for DC. Quote, one writer, I know we did the whole murderous Superman and sociopathic Batman thing, but I don't know. Does Kamala Harris take the character to a new, darker place? Is it too much for audiences? Continuing the quote, she's just way into the character, even deeper into it than Ledger or Bale were back in the day. It's like she never takes off this persona of being a psychotic sociopath. It's almost too creepy. Close quote. Babylon Bee, everyone. Predicting what could be a nightmare for all moviegoers the world around. Except China, which won't let her to be shown because, as we all know, she's really a ghost. All right, the market. We ended the week on an up note. The market closed well above the 33,000 mark, up 0.5% today. The NASDAQ led the charge, up over 1.75%, and the S&P 500 was up 1% and a fraction. Crude oil had a big bounce today, up almost a full 4%. It is now at $61.45 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude, and Bitcoin has been toying with the 60,000 mark all day. It is currently at 59,605 and change, up just a little over 1% from earlier today. All right. I love this clip. I found it as I peruse YouTube, as I always do to start the show. The very first place I look is my subscription feed on YouTube. And this is from the GOP War Room. If you are not subscribed to the GOP War Room on YouTube, get on it as soon as possible. I don't know if they have a Rumble channel. I honestly didn't think about it until just this moment. I will certainly check as soon as I get the chance. But this is a pair of Politico reporters doing a news wrap-up. And they keep agreeing that Joe Biden is a Trojan horse for the progressives. They come right out and say it. Now, the black reporter on the left there, he's making the point where I pick up the clip where Joe Biden is the perfect Trojan horse for the progressives because he speaks in such measured, I believe he even uses the word dulcet tones. In fact, I'm sure he uses the word dulcet tones. But he describes Bernie as being very aggressive, very in your face. Although they're both, of course, old white guys who are progressives, as opposed to who you would normally think of as a progressive, which is what he describes in this video. Although when you think about it, really, who are the progressives in the Democrat Party? You've got Bernie, you've obviously got Biden, you've got Harris, you've got Liz Warren, and AOC. These are the nuts. AOC is the only one young one out of the bunch. Harris is middle-aged. But listen to this, where they come to the realization, yes, Joe Biden is a Trojan horse for the progressives, and the best part, Trump was right. They say it several times. Trump was right when on the campaign trail, he said that Biden was going to be the most progressive president ever. Listen to this. It's beautiful, just beautiful. Folks, I didn't make that up. That happened. That happened. Two Politico reporters. Now, Politico does do some fairly straight news, but it is definitely slanted to the left. But you heard it. Trump was right. Biden is a Trojan horse for the progressive left. That is a quote. It doesn't get much more definitive than that. So, what's his name from NBC? Jarrett Holt. Jarrett Holt can take a flying leap because Politico's got this nailed. All right. Speaking of Politico, you remember last week I read from you in pretty good detail the report they did about the Hunter Biden gun scandal. To refresh your memory, back in 2018, I believe in September or October of that year, Hunter Biden had purchased a revolver from a local Delaware gun store. And his then girlfriend, who is the widow of Hunter's brother, Beau, let me spell that out again in a slightly different way. Hunter Biden was dating his brother's widow. Okay? While he was dating her sister and impregnating a stripper. I hope you've all got your Hunter Biden bingo cards out because I think we just made a full page. So anyway, the widow, Beau's widow, dating Hunter, Heidi, she knew that Hunter had a gun. She found it in his pickup truck. God love him for driving a pickup. And she did what any good God-fearing person fearing for the safety of herself and others around her would do when confronted with an obvious drug addict who had a handgun. She wrapped it in a black plastic bag and she put it in a dumpster outside of a high-end food store in Delaware, which is across the street from a high school. So she broke a number of federal laws. And the police show up after they're alerted to this theft of the gun, etc. And they question Heidi, and she tells them what she did. So they go to the store, they look in the dumpster, the gun's not there. Fast forward a little bit, a guy who rummages through the dumpsters for recyclables found the gun a few days later turned it into police. But at that point in time, the gun was missing, and again, across the street from a high school. So the police interview Hunter, and Hunter gets all kinds of weird. He asked one of the officers, when the officer asked Hunter if he'd been drinking or doing drugs, Hunter says, "What, are you trying to get me upset?" He attacks the officer for some reason. And then Hunter notices two Hispanic-looking men who work for that food store walking through the alley back towards the dumpsters and whatever. And Hunter coyly mentions that those guys are probably illegal. Because, they're Mexicans, so they've got to be illegal. Of course, there's no racism on the left at all, so let's not dwell on that. So then we read in the Politico story, and this part is disputed by a number of people, including Dan Bongino, that the Secret Service turned up at the gun store and asked for the 4473, the Federal Firearms Transfer Form, a form that you have to fill out if you buy any type of firearm, unless it's I think some black powder firearms are exempt, but not many. And I could be wrong there. I'm not a black powder shooter, so I can't say for sure. But on that form, the 4473 is a question. Basically, are you a drug user? Are you addicted to drugs, and are you using drugs? Hunter checked no. Now, from all indications, including Hunter's recently released book, Hunter was on drugs at that time period in 2018. Obviously, Heidi was worried about it. He certainly wasn't in a state of sobriety to the point where she wasn't worried about his having a gun. And he has made several references in recently resurfaced text messages between him and family members about drug use at that time. So that's all lined up in a nutshell. Now, what is important about this whole thing? Yes, lying on a 4473 is a federal offense. It is punishable by up to 10 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine. But there's some fine print to go along with that, and I've got that here in this article. Before we get any further, though, a lot of gun rights organizations are raising a hue and cry for the ATF and the FBI to get involved in this, to investigate this. You've got the Biden administration, 46 asterisk himself, threatening to use executive action to limit the Second Amendment, although nothing's happened yet. He's also demanding Congress push through another quote-unquote assault weapons ban. And so what these gun rights groups have been demanding, including the Second Amendment Foundation and the NRA, is we need to investigate whether or not Hunter lied on this 4473, because if he did, he needs to go to jail. You guys can't start passing new gun laws if you're not enforcing the ones that are already on the books. And gun rights activists have been screaming this from the top of their lungs for years. Every time the Democrats come up with new gun control legislation, the Republicans will state, conservatives, gun owners, whomever, liberals own guns too, but they will state quite convincingly, if we enforced the rules that are already on the books, some of these shootings would have been averted. Most significantly, the Sunderland Springs church shooting in Texas a few years ago. That guy purchased an AR-15, passed the background check, and I'm on YouTube. I can't describe what happened after that. But he had been convicted of a crime that is perfectly analogous to a felony when he was in the Air Force. He was court-martialed for domestic battery and dishonorably discharged. Those two things are negatives when it comes to getting a gun. A felony conviction and a dishonorable discharge, either of those prevent you from getting a gun. The thing is, though, the Air Force, for some reason, didn't put his conviction record into the national database. So when they ran the background check on him in Texas for that AR-15, he came up clean. That happened. That is a thing. Happens all the time. We do not enforce the 4473 violations anywhere near as much as we could. Anywhere close to being near. I think the last I read, I'm guessing here, approximately, maybe 20% of 4473 violations are prosecuted every year. So we have Hunter, technically at least, pretty close to a felony. But there are some fine points to be made. And I'm going to quote here from, let me see, who have I got here? Gentleman named, I lost his name, pardon me just a second. Drew Stevenson. He's a South Texas College law professor. And he said, quote, "It would be unlikely for public comments on drug addiction or accusations from an ex-wife to suffice as proof Biden was a drug user and prohibited from buying guns in 2018. Stevenson told, I'm reading from the Washington Free Beacon, by the way. Stevenson said, both the courts and the ATF have taken the position that it has to be both contemporaneous and ongoing drug use at the time. So it's not, have you ever had an addiction problem? And they're definitely not working with the mental health idea that once you're an addict, you're always an addict or something like that. According to Stevenson, courts usually require either a drug conviction within the past year or multiple arrests and failed drug tests within the past 5 years. Now, it goes on to note, you remember Biden was kicked out of the Navy for testing positive for cocaine. But that was within, I should say that was beyond the previous 5 years of the gun purchase. And the 2016 rehab trip, and then the cops found the crack pipe in his car. Again, those are just past the 5 years. There is one glimmer of hope for gun rights activists out there, though. Quoting Stevenson again. Let's say that the woman he was dating at the time turns on him and tells the press, quote, "I was finding him passed out and inebriated every day from his drug addiction at that time, and that's why I got rid of the gun," close quote. Stevenson continued, then yeah, he would have been a prohibited person, and yeah, he lied on his background check. So right now, basically, we're going to need some more corroboration on his drug use. That's where we're at right now. But there at least needs to be a full investigation, at the very least. The DOJ needs to announce this right away, and this needs to be looked into. And again, according to other people, including Dan Bongino, the Politico reporting about the Secret Service turning up at the gun store and trying to acquire the 4473, which is against federal law. Only the ATF has access to the 4473s. According to other people, that did not happen. The people in the Secret Service are saying that did not happen. So we have a he said, she said there. I'm inclined to believe it didn't happen because I've yet to be steered wrong by Dan Bongino. And we all know he was a Secret Service agent under several presidents, so he knows the folks. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But that's where all this stands right now. All right, a little bit of COVID news. A couple pieces. First, we talked about this the other day as well. Vaccine passports. Britain floated the idea first. The European Union's been tickling around it, although the European Union is so far behind on vaccinations right now that a vaccine passport would be laughable. They've got a lot more problems than trying to come up with that. And then we heard just the other day that the Biden administration is talking about vaccine passports. New York State has already implemented them. And there has been a lot of pushback, I played you the video of Naomi Wolf, who owns a tech company, who said that this would be a major invasion of privacy law, a major HIPAA violation, which is federal law regulating the release of health records to people outside of a very select few. And it could be a huge portal for hacking all of your personal information. And Naomi Wolf's good people. Well, it's not just Naomi Wolf. We've got a group of British lawmakers across the political spectrum who are against the vaccine passports in the UK. This is an article from the Daily Wire by Ryan Saavedra. More than 70 British lawmakers and officials have already signaled they oppose vaccine passports in a signed statement, calling them, quote, divisive and discriminatory. Those that signed the statement, which also included businesses and NGOs, represented the far-left Labour Party, the center-left Liberal Democrats, and the center-right Conservative Party. According to the full statement, we oppose the divisive and discriminatory use of COVID status certification to deny individuals access to general services, businesses, or jobs. And again, that is right across the board when it comes to British politics. All three major parties are in agreement that this is not a good idea, that this should not be allowed to happen. I don't have much more to say on that. Now, there is some good news here in the U.S. Home test kits for the Wuhan virus are available over the counter, or at least will be very shortly. The FDA just approved 2 over-the-counter quick tests, antibody tests for COVID for use at home. One from a place called Quidel, that's called their QuickView, and Abbott, yay Abbott, they call theirs the Binax Now test. And according to Abbott, their test is going to be available widespread real soon. In a press release, one of the companies whose test was authorized, Abbott stated, the Binax Now COVID-19 self-test is identical to the professional use test used since August 2020, bringing the most studied and widely used rapid antigen test to retail shelves across the country. Abbott also added that the self-test, quote, will be available nationwide and in large quantities at major food, drug, and mass merchandiser retailers nationally and will be priced affordably, similar to common over-the-counter tests. Quidel, or is it Quidel? I don't know. The other company also issued a press release stating that their at-home tests, quote, shows excellent performance with positive results agreeing with PCR 83.5% of the time and negative results agreeing 99.2% of the time, delivering confidence to patients running the test and facilitating informed discussions with doctors. So good news there. Do we need them now with with virus on the run as it is? I don't know, but every little bit helps, right? Every little bit helps. Let's move on to some state news. By the way, the YouTube portion of the program will be a little shorter today. I have a lot. The back end is a bit heavier today, so my apologies to Michael Scriven and the other great folk in YouTube. No sound. I just saw J.E.'s chat in YouTube that there was no sound. Excuse me, J.E., for not noticing that sooner. Did I not have any sound for that clip? No, there was no video sound. Oh, I didn't see that, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I think I know what happened. Hang on just a second. Let me check something. Yep. Yep, I see what happened. That was my fault. When I had that problem with the ghost audio yesterday, I screwed with the desktop audio settings by mistake, and I muted it. I do apologize. Yeah, J.E., thank you. But I did describe it perfectly. I will say that. It is my screw up, and I apologize. But what I did to lead into that clip, that is exactly what they said. The black reporter said that Joe Biden is the perfect Trojan horse for the progressive left because he speaks in dulcet tones as opposed to Bernie being in your face. And the female reporter said that she wants to have the male reporter, the black reporter, write an article that says Donald Trump was right. Joe Biden is the perfect Trojan horse for the left. And the guy, you may have seen his reaction in the video where he suddenly got kind of wide-eyed and he ducked his head. He screamed out, and I will admit, kind of a girl voice. He said, "Don't get me in trouble." I think I did a pretty good imitation of him right then. Don't get me in trouble. But it was funny. But they're right. They're right. I do apologize about missing your notice about the sound not being there. That is totally my fault. All right, let's get back to the state news. As you know, not only Georgia, but Texas have recently passed voter laws that shore up voter integrity. Georgia made the horrible cardinal sin, according to the left, of requiring that people provide an ID when they vote, either in person or by mail. They also made clear that third parties, I shouldn't say third parties, interested parties who have a desire for a certain outcome in an election they're not allowed to to give anything to people standing in line to vote, including but not limited to, and I'm quoting, food and drink. So, of course, the left, including our lion Biden, 46 asterisk himself, started screaming from the rooftops that Georgia had passed Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Crow on steroids, making Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. Those are all quotes from our president. Those are direct quotes from our president. When in fact the bill, all it did was shore up integrity in the vote and make it easier for people to vote because it expanded early voting in Georgia by several days, including delineating weekend hours that had not been previously set by law. There were some precincts with early voting where the election officials only worked part-time, so the polls were only open for half the day. That has changed. Now the early voting polls have to be open at least 8 to 5. As Electric Dog says in the D-Live chat, Jim Eagle, what does that even mean? No one knows, dog. No one knows. So, of course, not only is our president lying about it, but for some reason, major corporations are lying about it too. And two big outfits in Georgia, the main employers, are Delta Airlines, which is, I believe, the world's largest airline, and Coca-Cola, which has been a staple of the Georgia economy for over 100 years. And for some reason, they decided it was within their best corporate interests to continue the lie about the Georgia bill, Bill 202, as it's colloquially known. And they repeated the exact same, as Laura points out, Stacey Abrams' talking points about how the bill discriminated against minority voters. And I have a poll coming up about just how ludicrous of an assertion that is, how completely against fact that assertion is. That'll come up in a bit. But Governor Kemp and the Georgia legislature in general are not taking any of this lying down. They are firing back, and they're firing back with both barrels. And this article from townhall.com by Reagan McCarthy, Governor Kemp will not be bullied by woke corporations outraged over common sense voting bill. So you can pretty well see where they're coming from there. So here's a poll quote from the governor. I'm not going to be bullied by these people. If you really look at what we've done to perfect the bill that I actually signed, we worked with these corporations, including Delta, who never raised any of these issues until 2 or 3 days after. They're not focused on the specifics of the bill. And this is Kemp on Fox News America newsroom on Thursday. Continuing the quote, we're not going to back down when we have a bill that expands the opportunity for people to vote on the weekends in Georgia. We have as many early voting days as anybody in the country. We've got no excuse absentee. We're adding drop boxes to counties that didn't have them the last time. Governor Kemp also tweeted at Phil Murphy, who was the governor of New Jersey, one of the grandma-killing governors, in case you lost track of the 5 states that put COVID-positive patients into nursing homes and did it in a mandatory fashion. New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and California. All 5 of those states did that. And more people are looking into those numbers, including in New Jersey. Gavin Newsom's got his own problems with the recall before he has to worry about all the people he killed from that pronouncement. But Governor Phil Murphy decided to tweet out the following. Tomorrow, joined by Stacey Abrams, I will sign legislation establishing early voting. While states across our nation turn back the clock to Jim Crow-era voter suppression laws, New Jersey will expand access to the ballot box. And Governor Kemp related this. Congratulations to the state of New Jersey on now having 9 days of early voting. Georgia has 17 mandatory days of early voting with 2 additional optional Sundays. So screw you, Phil Murphy. Screw you. Also, you may have seen that Governor Kemp has favorably compared Georgia's voting bill to Delaware's voting bill. Georgia has more relaxed voting standards than Delaware. But who are we to judge? I almost cursed. I almost cursed out loud big time. I had barely held that back. Now, there is some Democrat pushback on some of this. Some of this. I've got it coming up in the after show, but you may have seen the clip where, for some inexplicable reason, our president, 46 asterisk, right here, 46 asterisk, our president decided that it would be a good idea to get on ESPN and promote Major League Baseball boycotting the All-Star game from Georgia this year. I remember the Democrats screaming, "Holy hell," when President Trump weighed in on the NFL players kneeling during the national anthem bit. They absolutely lost their monkey shit. Pardon the language. I told you I was going to curse. And Trump was the orange man bad. How dare the president weigh in on national sports? It's none of his business. Leave him alone. So now the guy who's sitting in office at the moment, at least who's supposed to be sitting in the office, says that, yeah, he backs Major League Baseball banning the All-Star game from Georgia. He thinks that's a good idea. And he gave a reason for that I'm not going to give you now. I want you to hear it in full, just in case you missed it, because I have something to back up just how insane our current president is when it comes to his comment. But right now, let's focus on a particular Georgia person, and that's newly minted senator from Georgia, Democrat Senator Jon Ossoff, the boutique Marxist, the silver spoon Marxist. Jon Ossoff is actually pushing back against this MLB boycott of Georgia. He's not for it. I will quote him. "I absolutely oppose and reject any notion of boycotting Georgia. Georgia welcomes businesses, investment, jobs, opportunity, and events." Okay, that's good. And this was in a response to a request for comment from the Epoch Times. This is an article by them written by Zachary Steiber. Here's where it gets stupid, though. I actually had some respect for Jon Ossoff, and then he said the following. "In fact, economic growth is driving much of the political progress we have seen here. Georgia welcomes the world's business. Corporations disgusted like we are with the disgraceful voter suppression bill should stop any financial support to Georgia's Republican Party, which is abusing its power to make it harder for Americans to vote." Like I said, up to that point, he had my respect. And then he towed the party line. I think Ossoff should have stopped at Georgia welcomes the world's business. And he might have actually pumped up a few points in the polls. But he has just absolutely burned any Republican crossover bridge he had. I mean, we all know that the only reason Ossoff and Warnock won in January was because Republican voters in Georgia were so completely disaffected by the absolute train wreck of an election that Governor Kemp and Secretary of State Raffensperger held in November of 2020. An absolute train wreck by every conceivable metric. And because of that, Republican voters stayed home in droves in January and allowed cheaters like Abrams to sweep Ossoff and Warnock into office. Now remember, Warnock is on the ballot in 2022. His was a temporary seat, a temporary filling spot. That seat has not been fully vested yet, if you will. So we can get the Senate back in Georgia in 2022 if we kick Warnock out, which I believe will happen. But you almost had me, Ossoff. You almost had me. So Georgia is not the only state getting hammered by local big corporations. Texas is feeling the same heat. The thing is, though, like Georgia, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he don't give a damn. Say whatever you want. We're going to run our state the way we see fit. And if you want to move your company, I'm putting words in Governor Abbott's mouth, but this is on the lips of every conservative right now. To every one of these woke corporations that is bitching about voter laws being strengthened in their states. If you don't like our voter laws, feel free to move to New York or California. Go right ahead. We have businesses by the hundreds clamoring to get into our state. We can use your footprint for someone else with no difficulty whatsoever. Go ahead and move. If you don't like it here, go ahead and move. Georgia went so far as to repeal about a $35 million fuel tax break that Delta was getting for its fueling stations at Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. $35 million, boom, off the books because of Delta overreaching the way it did. And American Airlines thinks that they're going to push Governor Abbott around in Texas, and they are dead wrong too. Quoting Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, First of all, let me back up a little bit. Let me quote American Airlines. Here's what they wrote. Earlier this morning, the Texas State Senate passed legislation with provisions that limit voting access. To make Americans' stance clear, we are strongly opposed to this bill and others like it. Any legislation dealing with how elections are conducted must ensure ballot integrity and security while making it easier to vote, not harder. At American, we believe we should break down barriers to diversity, equity, and inclusion in our society, not create them. That's American Airlines talking about a voter's right bill. I don't know where they get off saying voting should be easier. Voting should not be easy. Voting should be legal. It should be available to anyone who is qualified to vote, but it should not be easy. It's not easy to get a driver's license. It's not easy to get on an American Airlines jet without showing ID and your ticket. Should it be easier to get on an American Airlines jet than it should be to vote? Put your money where your mouth is, airline. Let's see what you have to say about that. Are you going to allow me to get on a plane without showing an ID now? I mean, we shouldn't even have to use TSA with this kind of reasoning. Not that TSA works, but that's a whole nother story. So Lieutenant Governor Patrick of Texas fired back. Quote, as Lieutenant Governor of Texas, I'm stunned that American Airlines would put out a statement saying, quote, we are strongly opposed to this bill, Senate Bill 7, just minutes after their government relations representative called my office and admitted that neither he nor the American Airlines CEO had actually read the legislation. We heard these same outcries claiming voter suppression in 2011 when Texas passed the voter ID bill. In fact, just the opposite occurred. Voter turnout in Texas soared from 8 million in 2012 to 11,144,000 in 2020, a 39% increase. Gubernatorial election voter turnout has increased by 76% since voter ID was passed. Closing out the quote, Texans are fed up with corporations that don't share our values trying to dictate public policy. The majority of Texans support maintaining the integrity of our elections, which is why I made it a priority this legislative session. Senate Bill 7 includes comprehensive reforms that will ensure voting in Texas is consistent statewide and secure. Pardon me, I have to add one more thing. By the way, this is the same American Airlines that in 2017 led the fight to try to force us to allow boys to play girls' sports in Texas and take away their scholarships. They are probably still fighting for that today, and it is likely they have not read Senate Bill 29 either. Game, set, match to Texas. Again, if you don't like it, move. Find another airport as well laid out and as capable of handling massive amounts of traffic as DFW. Move your hub somewhere else. Go for it. Try LA. LAX is crumbling. It is one of the oldest airports in the country. Major airports, I should say. And its infrastructure is for crap. And they can't expand it. There's no room. They can't expand it. And there's no money to repair half of it. So go ahead, American. Move to LA. Move to Seattle. I hear SeaTac's lovely this time of year. LaGuardia, I'm sure LaGuardia has at least 2 extra gates open right now. You can move your entire hub to LaGuardia. Go for it. Or shut up and do your job. And fly people. I am sick and tired of corporations in America thinking they have a right to dictate public policy. Now, other people smarter than I have pointed this out. They're only doing this to try and keep the wolves away from their door. They are the person in line hoping the alligator will eat them last. That's why they all have diversity and inclusion boards. That's why they're making noise about making sure their boardroom, quote unquote, represents America. That's why they all posted black squares on their social media accounts after George Floyd died. That's why they all donated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars individually to BLM, if not millions, thereby making it the single most powerful Marxist organization in the country. BLM Incorporated has founded 2 political action committees, not 1, 2, to push its insane Marxist agenda on the rest of the United States. And that is the corporations doing. They gave them that money. A group that wants capitalism destroyed, that is working in the exact opposite direction of any profit-making company in the world. And they funded it. This is your monster, corporate America. You created it. You live with it because people who know how to think in this country are fed up with you. Skullcrams mentions in the D-Live chat, just like Wokey Cola. Yeah, exactly. Wokey Cola. Go ahead, Coca-Cola. Put your bottling plant in Illinois. There's some good places with good water in Illinois. Your taxes will double. Your corporate taxes will double. Your employee paid state income taxes will triple. Gas is more expensive. Transportation is more expensive. But, they've got great voter laws, according to places like Coke and American and Delta. So, go ahead. Screw you. Do your job and shut up. Or face the wrath of the American consumer. I'll tell you right now, there are a number of companies that are on my S list. And I'm embarrassed that just 2 weeks ago, I promoted taking some Coke to homeless shelters and food banks because they had actually stood up for something that made sense in Georgia. And then they turned right around and stabbed all of us in the back. I'm not going to make that same mistake twice. Coca-Cola, Delta, Nike, Apple, all professional sports except for MMA and hockey. You can all go to hell. I'm done with you. Moving right along. Also, Texas, they're not resting on election reform. Like other states, including Florida, which has led the way, Texas is working on making it illegal for major tech companies to deplatform Texans who are on those platforms. Specifically, this is an article, by the way, from the Epoch Times by Samuel Allegri. Senate Bill 12, which is sponsored by Republican State Senator Brian Hughes, passed on Thursday and would apply to Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms that have at least 100 million users per month. And the measure would require companies to make their moderation policies known, publish reports about the content blocked out by the platform, and create an appeals process for the removed content. Even though, quoting Senator Hughes, even though they're private actors, because they are common carriers, because they chose to enter this business and offer their services, then they are bound by certain rules. Now, it is obvious Texas is going to get sued when this law passes and is signed into, I should say when this bill passes and is signed into law by Governor Abbott. It's a given. Florida's already braced for that. And but Texas and Florida, they have the law on their sides. These companies have been flagrantly violating their own terms of service for years and years and years now. The fact that the Republicans, when we had the House and the Senate and the White House, sat on their butts and did nothing to rein in big tech when they had the chance, I think is one of the greatest failures of the Trump administration. And I don't blame Trump. He wanted to do it, but he didn't have Congress. He barely had enough Congress to get the Tax Cut and Jobs Act through. Barely. Oops. Sorry.
Start from the beginning of the episode. So first of all, we want to remind you, wait a few seconds out of respect for the victims, and then jump in to score all your political points.
Hang on.
Don't jump in with the political jabs right away. Wait a few seconds.
You just need a cushion,
Yeah.
a few seconds of cushion, and then dive in.
Moment of silence, thoughts and prayers, and then immediately just...
All right. I'm sorry about that. That was the Babylon Bee piece I teased earlier. I do apologize. I must have hit a button on my headset. All right. Again, once again, great live programming here on the All Hat No Cattle Daily News Radio. You gotta love it. All right. So, and again, basically, Texas is bracing for lawsuits from big tech, but they're going to win. It's going to take years to drag out through the courts. The only thing we have to worry about is if the Democrats follow through on their promises and pack all the federal courts. They did that to the D.C. Circuit Court years ago, turning it into a solid conservative majority into a solid liberal majority by creating an extra 3 seats on it for no other reason than to accomplish that. Once again, if a Democrat ever tells you they want to do something for the good of the country, turn around and run away, because they don't care about the good of the country. They care about the good of the Democrat Party. Moving right along. I wanted to get to the story the other day, but there's been some developments, so I brought it back for this afternoon. As you know, there has been an ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine had been part of Russia and then the Soviet Union for hundreds and hundreds of years, ever since a decree was passed between Tsarist Russia and the Russian Cossacks, who were running the Ukraine region at the time. Ukraine achieved quote-unquote independence back in, I believe, 91, after being ruled by Russia and the Soviet Union for 350 years. And then during the Biden administration, Russia invaded the eastern peninsula of Ukraine, the Crimea, which includes the deepwater port Sevastopol in the Black Sea. I believe I've got that right. And overtook the Ukrainian Navy, because Ukraine had its own fleet, the Black Sea Fleet. And there have been saber rattlings and actual gunfire between the Ukrainian army and the Russian separatist forces on the other side of the no man's land for years. You remember Biden was famous for sending the Ukrainians blankets and MREs and walkie-talkies when Russia invaded, instead of sending them something they could use to fight the Russians. It took President Trump to arm the Ukrainians with anti-tank missiles, javelins specifically, to stop any threat of a Russian armored advance across the line. Well, just the other day, fighting broke out again, and 4 Ukrainian soldiers were killed by Russian separatist gunfire. And I've got an article here by Ben Whedon from Breitbart. Russia ends poorly kept Ukraine ceasefire. The Russians fired first, near as we could tell. By the way, if you're interested, this picture shows someone, I don't know what side he's on, but that is a Russian-built SVD sniper rifle. A very accurate semi-automatic sniper rifle. Very accurate. Not easy to aim across a distance with a scope. Freehand, it can be done, but I don't know what this guy's training is. I don't know how good he is, but he's obviously firing from a fortified position. But it's become a hot war. Russia is moving troops into the area at a pretty brisk clip. They're saying they're doing it for border security, but the only thing threatening Russia's border is nothing. The Ukraine army is just trying to keep the Russian-backed separatist forces from invading the rest of Ukraine with Russian backing. I mean, the Ukrainian separatists are backed by Russia. They're mainly Russian ethnics. So that is part of the friction between them and the rest of Ukraine. A very common occurrence after the breakup of the Soviet satellite states. But so we have a situation on our hands. We're worried about Taiwan being invaded by China. I've talked about that several times. And the warning signs get clearer and clearer. Earlier this week, China sent in the most number of warplanes into the Taiwanese ADIZ than they ever have before. And they also infiltrated the Japanese ADIZ with Chinese warplanes this week. So now we've got this going on in Ukraine. And unfortunately, people with the name Biden being in the White House don't have a real strong record of standing up for the autonomy of the Ukrainian people. But our military, this is where I'm going with this, our military is very, very focused on becoming and maintaining itself as the finest fighting force the world has ever seen. They're doing everything they can to maintain their war footing, their war readiness, and their ability to kill and destroy anything they're pointed at. And you know how I know that? Because of the following two stories. These are perfect examples of how mission-focused the Department of Defense is on maintaining our supremacy as a world superpower militarily. First, this. This is from March 31st. This is from the defense.gov website. This is the official DoD website, folks. This is not the Babylon Bee. This is from March 31st, just a few days ago. Let me read this to you. Today, the Department of Defense published the policy updates for transgender military service. The policy updates restore the department's original 2016 policies regarding transgender service. The revised policies prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity or an individual's identification as transgender, provide a means by which provide a means by which to access into the military in one's self-identified gender, provided all appropriate standards are met, provide a path for those in service for medical treatment, gender transition, and recognition in one's self-identified gender, and seeks to protect the privacy of all service members and to treat all service members with dignity and respect. The policies will be effective on April 30, 2021. Folks, the military is dedicated to providing sex change surgery for transgender servicemen and women, or servicewomen and men, or people who think they're one but not the other. I don't know. I lose track. That is great news. As far as I'm concerned, that is great news. I want to be in the trench with someone who had gender reassignment surgery and has to use a device to keep their new sex organ from collapsing and healing because it's technically a wound. I want that. I want someone in the front line with me who has to inject themselves with hormones periodically to keep their voice from changing. I want someone backing me up who has a 42% chance of suicide. That is the way to run a military, folks. That is the way to run a military. And I see no way whatsoever to denigrate this new policy, which actually isn't even a new policy. It's a continuance of the policy that was first issued in 2016 before Trump took office. This is all good news. Do not despair. Do not despair, because he, hers, sie, and zers are defending us as we speak. thanks to our new inclusive military. But there is also great news if you drill down a little further. You may or may not know we have something called U.S. SOCOM, which is basically the United States Special Operations Command. Special Operations includes Green Berets, Delta Force with the Air Force, SEAL teams, Navy, and other elite military groups inside the Department of Defense. But those are the main three. Green Berets, Army, Delta Force, Air Force, and SEALs, Navy. Those are the main three. And thank God we have a diversity and inclusion chief at the top of U.S. SOCOM. Thank God. There's only one problem, though. He's been reassigned at the moment. Hasn't been fired. But is currently doing other duties other than running diversity and inclusion at the most elite arm of our military. Because he made a couple slight transgressions before he was appointed to this incredibly important and world-respected office in the U.S. military. He decided that a couple times he needed to make tweets comparing President Trump to Hitler. That was good for him. That was good for him. This guy's name is Richard Torres Estrada. Obviously not a diversity hire by any stretch of the imagination. Can't be. But let me just read you the tweet when this guy took over. U.S. SOCOM welcomes our new Chief of Diversity and Inclusion, Mr. Richard Torres Estrada. We look forward to his contribution in enhancing the capabilities and effectiveness of Special Force operations through the diversity of talent, helping us recruit the best of the best. Hashtag quiet professionals. Now, this article from military.com, this is not The Blaze, this is not Breitbart, this is military.com. And just to give you an idea of how in the bag they are for Trump, let me read this paragraph for you. The well-circulated meme juxtaposes a doctored photo of Hitler appearing to hold up a book resembling a Bible with a genuine photograph of Trump holding a Bible in front of St. John's Church across from the White House. Get this part. The Trump photograph was taken on June 1st, 2020, after police and National Guard members used tear gas on peaceful protesters so he could walk to the church. Military.com, folks. Going with the completely debunked leftist narrative that the rioters at Lafayette Park were peaceful. I'm telling you, this country. You can't trust anybody. You can't trust anybody. That's where we're at right now. The SOCOM diversity chief has been reassigned. Just reassigned. But remember those National Guardsmen who were on duty guarding the Capitol? Who were pulled off post because they had posted pro-Trump memes on their social media? They were deemed security risks and were taken off duty. We have been told that the military instituted a 90 or 100-day stand down, which basically means all training operations stop, while the military looked into the social media posts of every member of the armed forces to see if they promoted right-wing extremism. If you had a Gadsden flag on your social media, chances were the military was going to come knocking at your door and make you explain it. But the SOCOM, Chief of Diversity and Inclusion, is temporarily reassigned while they look into his comparing the then Commander-in-Chief to a doctored photo of Hitler. By the way, if anyone wonders, this photo of Hitler supposedly holding up a Bible, that is a Photoshop. That is a Photoshop. There's no picture of Hitler holding up a Bible. That is bullshit. Also, Torres Estrada shared a cartoon last May showing police arresting the fairy tale Three Bears while taking a statement from Goldilocks. The meme is captioned, "If you still don't understand how racism works, remember she broke into their house." Hashtag stop racism. He also shared an image of Trump last July with multiple derogatory quotes about him from former members of his cabinet superimposed and a mocking missing flyer for Senator Ted Cruz. And that was in February. And again, Torres Estrada has been assigned to other duties pending the results of the investigation. A SOCOM spokesman did not say what his new duties are. That's how it works, folks. That's how it works. Just in case you were wondering, our military is by far and away determined to defend us at all costs. Unless you don't agree with them, in which case, then you're out on your ass. All right, I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube. I want to thank J.E. and Michael Scriven for being in the chat. I do apologize for not getting to you. I was so focused on the first part of the show, I really did not look at the chats that often, a very big failing of mine. But we will be back Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you would like to see the full show, please feel free to move over to dlive.tv/AHNC. I'm on on trovo.live, but DLive is the best of the two. And you'll see the full show there every Monday through Friday. And of course, today, since it's Friday, we're going to end on a humorous note. I have a video from the Babylon Bee to share with you. I promised the first block would be short. Instead, I went 7 minutes long, which goes to show how good I am at budgeting time. So goodbye, YouTube, and I'll see you Monday.